Coming to paperback and e-readers everywhere, E-Steam Horror of the Hyena Woman. Hell's aspiring angel takes on a wicked werewoman in this action-packed, all-new E-Steam series adventure. Pre-order your copy of E-Steam Horror of the Hyena Woman on Amazon.com today. The streaming service Netflix announced that they lost over 200,000 subscribers in the first quarter. Now, this was an announcement that shocked many on Wall Street as shares of Netflix plummeted 35%, wiping out $50 billion in market capital. And this announcement was after the company's stock had already dropped 40% year to date. Now, at one time, Netflix was considered the platform for streaming movies and TV shows. However, over the course of the last 2 to 3 years, Netflix has seen a lot of competition from the providers who once gave them content. Now, what made Netflix profitable in the past was that it was the only place you could go to watch content online and watch TV shows like Friends, Seinfeld, and other shows that they actually produced on their platform, like Luke Cage. However, many of the big six media platforms decided that it was more profitable for them to create their own streaming services rather than pay Netflix to go out here and host content on their site. So, in an effort to try to go out here and minimize cost, many of these big six media companies like your Discovery, Time Warner, and Comcast have decided not to go out here and pay Netflix to syndicate their content. No, they have decided to go out here and create their own streaming platforms, and on those streaming platforms, they would host all of their own content. And over the last year, we have seen Amazon's Prime streaming service rise. We have seen your Paramount Plus come out, your Disney Plus come out, your Hulu, and we've also seen NBC, Comcast, come out with Peacock. So there are now 5 paid streaming services, along with Tubi, which is owned by Fox, which is free. And with all of these content providers putting their own content on their own platforms and syndicating their own content on these platforms, they no longer are putting content on Netflix. Now, this has really impacted Netflix because it relied on the shows on those platforms to be able to generate revenue for itself, because with your Netflix being the only place where you could watch old shows like Seinfeld, Friends, CW shows, and many other programs, this was an incentive that viewers had to go subscribe to Netflix. But now many of those viewers are going over to the other platforms where they can go see these companies' content and pay for that content on those sites. Now, your Netflix has really suffered over the last year from what I believe to be extreme overconfidence, because as these other streaming services were coming out with their platforms and creating their own exclusive content, Netflix was spending a lot of money on content that really wasn't adding value to the platform. Now, this kind of content is what I called woke content, because most of this content was basically about promoting identity politics and promoting tokenization as representation and promoting narratives of social justice. And these types of content really alienated a lot of viewers like myself who were watching Netflix on the regular. Now, I ended my Netflix subscription back in August of 2020 after I saw they decided to put this film called Cuties on its platform. Now, this Cuties film was one of these foreign films, and it featured children being sexualized, and that was one of the things that turned me off and made me end my subscription to Netflix. And many of the big problems with Netflix is a lot of the content that they were putting on the platform that was original was a lot of this social justice, identity politics content, which many people called woke content. And this content was stuff that alienated a lot of people, like a show that had a gay Jesus. And they also went out here and again produced films like Cuties that featured children, as I see it, basically being exploited in borderline child pornography. Now, the first thing that led to the decline of Netflix was Cuties, because a lot of subscribers like myself started going out here and canceling their subscriptions because the content was just so offensive. And as a lot of people canceled their subscriptions for Netflix after Cuties, we started to see Netflix start to peak again. But the whole thing was, this was short lived, because many viewers would come to Netflix, like myself, after one of my viewers asked me to look at the film They Harder, They Fall, and you would find absolutely nothing there as related to content except stuff that had heavy social justice themes, heavy far left themes, and heavy identity politics. I remember trying to scroll through most of the content on Netflix, and there really wasn't much to watch on Netflix except stuff like Halle Berry's Bruised, which was basically promoting more of the same social justice narratives that turned me off as related to much of their content. And I remember trying to sit through the movie Fear Street, because one of my viewers said that Kiana Madeira, the actress who was in Fear Street, would make a great Matilda Crowley, but I just could not sit through that movie because it was just too much social justice in the storyline, and it made it just impossible to watch. So one of the big problems with Netflix is content, and on the internet, content is king. If you do not have quality content that appeals to large audiences, you are not going to be able to build your platform online. And your Netflix has gone out here and alienated a lot of viewers with stuff like Bruised, stuff like Fear Street, and stuff like Cuties, and stuff like Masters of the Universe Revelation. Masters of the Universe Revelation could have been a big money maker for Netflix. Unfortunately, Netflix went out here and decided to push Teela as the star of the show, instead of trying to reintroduce viewers to He-Man, who every kid knew back in the 80s, and was looking for a new generation of viewers to see what was great about He-Man. Now, this was after your Netflix had a bomb with She-Ra, which was just an absolutely terrible show, but your Netflix wants to go out here and put agenda over producing quality content, and this is the main reason why Netflix's stock wound up tumbling and it wound up losing its audience. Most people, like myself, when we look at Netflix's content, we really don't see any content we relate to. We don't see any stories on Netflix that we care about. And because the viewer doesn't see any sort of content that they can relate to or care about, this is why people are canceling their Netflix subscriptions. Now, some are canceling because many are still out of work due to the pandemic, and many others are canceling because they don't have the time to watch Netflix. But the core reason why a lot of people are canceling their Netflix is due to content, and competitors have a lot better content on platforms like HBO Max, or they have better content on free platforms like Tubi. I've gone to Tubi and watched a lot more content than I would on many of the paid platforms, because they have a lot of great old 80s movies on there, and your Netflix doesn't have anything that's fresh and fun like the old 80s movies on Tubi. And that's just my opinion on Tubi. It's a much better managed site than Netflix, which just gives you a lot of social justice content, and that social justice content just makes it where you just want to click out and keep it moving. Now, as your Netflix decided to go woke, they decided to go on a spending spree, and they spent lots of money on lots of content that most people really aren't interested in. And when they went out here spending hundreds of millions of dollars on all kinds of social justice content, this is why a lot of viewers got turned off from Netflix, because instead of going out here and giving us content that would allow us to watch Netflix and chill, it just left us all old cold. And as we were left cold, we just decided to go other places, because your Netflix just produces content that is just unwatchable at this point. Because as I was sitting there with this sub from watching The Harder They Fall a couple of months ago, I saw absolutely nothing on the Netflix platform worth watching. And that's one of the big problems with your Netflix as related to being a streaming service. It has lost all of its perspective as related to the business it was supposed to be in, and has strayed far away from its original mission as a content provider. When you're creating a website like a Netflix and wanting people to go out here and stream content, you need to go out here and understand content, again, is king. And you have to have compelling content on your platform if you want viewers to care about your platform. And Netflix has really lost perspective on this, and because they've lost perspective on this, they have lost their audience. And as they have lost their audience, competitors have come in and taken their spot. But this is what happens when you put politics and social justice over business. It winds up becoming a place where you wind up putting yourself in the place where you're practically about to go out of business. Now, your Netflix could possibly turn this around, but the only way they're going to turn it around is to get away from woke content, because woke content doesn't appeal to anyone. Yes, it allows you an opportunity to virtue signal to audiences. It allows you an opportunity to pander to people who you think may want to be represented, but it doesn't allow you to generate revenue and profits, and it doesn't allow you to build a viewership that cares about your content to spread word of mouth. Because most American families want family-friendly PG-13 content, and that's not something you see on Netflix, where you've got shows like Cuties talking about sexualizing children, and that's not something most American families want to see, because that's not appropriate content they want to share with their families, and the subject is extremely uncomfortable. Not to mention, there are things like Masters of the Universe Revelation, where you alienated a big fan base because the Masters fan base was huge, and then you sat there and thought, oh, I can put on whatever I want and they'll just view it. And that attitude is one of the big problems at Netflix. They believe they are able to just put on whatever they want, not understanding that when you are creating a platform, you are serving the customer. And that is the biggest problem with Netflix. They have forgotten how to serve the customer, and they think that the customer is just supposed to sit there and watch whatever they produce without ever thinking about providing the customer with quality content in a competitive marketplace, because that's what's happened to the streaming platforms. It has become extremely competitive, and sadly, Netflix sat on its laurels and got comfortable, took its audience for granted, and now they are in a place where they may not be able to survive for much longer, because if they don't really try to regroup and get back to producing quality content, they may not be around, because again, they don't have the syndicated content that rotates around on different streaming services like Amazon Prime, Disney Plus, Hulu, and your Tubi. A lot of that content from the studios rotates around, and Netflix can't rely on that content. No, they have to produce fresh, original content, and they have to produce fresh, original content that appeals to large audiences. Because what they're producing right now doesn't appeal to anyone because a lot of the content makes people uncomfortable. I know I wasn't comfortable watching some of this content, like The Harder They Fall, because of the woke themes, and I really was not happy with Halle Berry's Bruised because they just threw a curve at me that really wound up making me say, yes, Netflix is too woke, and if Netflix stays on the woke road, they are definitely going to go broke sooner rather than later. Now, if you want to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, or my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. And if you want to try some of my positive black fiction on the SJS Direct imprint, like the ISIS series, the E-Steam series, the John Hayes series, and the books of the Spinsterella trilogy, you can find all of that content on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find it on Smashwords, the iBookstore, and Google Play. That's all I have to say for this video. You comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, ISIS Legacy. Sorority secrets of the goddess next door are revealed in this all-new ISIS series adventure. Get ISIS Legacy in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere.